In my last video, I cloned Alan Watts' voice because I like how it sounds, but today I'm using Richard Burton's. It's part of an experiment with AI to see just where it may fall short of human simulation. I'm not so sure why this simulation seems to have a slight Australian accent, but anyway, the voice should reflect more of a slight Welsh accent since Richard Burton Jenkins Jr. was his full name, and Jenkins is Welsh for Little John. The writer of this script, the real me, also comes from Welsh descendants John, by the way. As you are watching and listening to this narration, I expect you too will find it both amusing and edifying. In this video, I'll try and paint a picture of a concept I've already described in a previous video, as well as in my ebook, Insider English, and LinkedIn articles, and that's morpheme, a word I coined almost a decade ago. The morpheme more itself is related to ma, mer, mur, mur, mir, which derive from the Sanskrit mer, meaning to die, as in mortal or finite. So I define a morpheme as a recurring phonemic pattern or submorphemic semantic attractor that recurs within a vast number of seemingly etymologically unrelated words, which carries inherent intrinsic meaning nevertheless. And today I'll begin by illustrating this with a common formulation which you see here, which only conventionally refers to a past context and one that is generally no longer true. Then further on I shall illustrate what I consider to be a morpheme.
I used to wake up late, or I didn't used to wake up early.
Meaning that action no longer is the case, or the opposite is presently true, where use seems to carry the same semantics in other constructions. In the example given, I consider the state of arousing from sleep to be the reme. If you've followed my previous videos, you know that the reme is an embedded sense in any given statement, and use, regardless of past context, serves to highlight a current situation if we understand its role as a resultative rather than a verb with an inflection. And late or early, in final position which addresses change, is the nucleus. The participle to always hints at direction and, by extension, purpose. Even if we may not be conscious of its underlying role due to a semantic change. The intrinsic meaning of to I've also already outlined in a previous video. Originally, I used not to rise early meant something like, I practiced rising late. Only later did the structure change to include the auxiliary, emphatic do, together with negation, not, which is downplayed when contracted to didn't. This new string, or chunk, though, is interpreted as a past tense, when it is in fact a modal backshifting of use to imply a distancing from a current situation. In actual fact, the affixing of d marks a resultant state, not a temporal action. As such, the notion of past as the context is irrelevant. Another assumption is that used to fossilized into a so-called semi-modal marker, one characteristic of a past habit. I argue, however, that however buried it may be from a habitual use, the core sense of something being used remains. The marked S in used to should clue us in that we have a participial phrase, not the verb use, which otherwise contains a soft z sound. In the negative construction, we see more clearly how use contains the core semantic of the older sense of the word use, which in Middle English meant to practice habitually or be accustomed, from Old French user, meaning to employ or be in the habit of. Latin uti produced the noun usus, which in itself has a dual semantic field. In both patterns shown here, the lexical core, use, contributes a sense of habituation grounded in experience, pragmatic regularity or deployment. The French participle user, meaning worn, is etymologically related to the participle used. Its sense of habitual action comes from Old French user, to employ, practice, be in the habit of. Again, Latin uti, meaning to make use of, implies a particular outcome in parallel with a sense of achievement. As it happens, nothing has changed. Only in the current English construction, it's more cryptic since the word in question is embedded in the string in much the same way as is be in the negative construction, as you see here. When we break components down in the formulation, seen here, use in be used carries the meaning accustomed, or a state of familiarity, and where be is indicative of a time frame, and the suffix ing highlights the activity. Again, used is not past, though adaptation has taken place. The particle to, moreover, retains its directional meaning, orientation toward something.
I'm used to waking up late. I'm not used to waking up early.
Here, the speaker is adept at the activity of waking, from a repetitive practice where used intrinsically bears a modal, nuanced sense of a worn habit. The apparent grammatical divergence masks a shared conceptual base until we break each particle apart to reveal its semantic value, treating use as the semantic core. I'm used to getting up early is a simplified, concise way of saying,
I stand in a state of adaptation toward that activity of having achieved familiarity. I was used to getting up early.
ditto. Inasmuch as was has shifted to a past context, it's not necessarily not still the case that the speaker gets up early today. The would in I would rise early is backshifted from will, where the wa phoneme indicates a distancing from a present condition, as does the apophony or vowel shift, would, of ill becoming oo plus d. The modal will itself more generally involves volition, which is where we get the will to do something. As I've already explained in an earlier video, the use of will by default contains a condition of some kind, even if not verbally stated. It being a modal, the receiver will need more context than is given to know whether the would in I would rise early acts as a regular past occurrence or then a more hypothetical distancing from a current real-life situation. Interesting how both French words outil, or tool, and utile, useful, infer practicality. It comes from Latin ustilis and French ustensile, where we get utensil, but also utility. Moreover, there exists a semantic overlap between use, or utilize, and the word wear, which would explain why in English we wear clothes until they become worn. Clothes become used, like a car with extended mileage wears, and when resold becomes a used car. The second meaning of Latin usu, the ablative, could mean by experience or through practice. That experiential meaning is what feeds directly into Old French user, to practice habitually. Now we find deep conceptual or semantic unity. Repeated engagement, practical deployment, familiarity, and even physical wearing, all modally intertwined notions in this lexical family. Only the D in be used to encodes a state that holds after repeated engagement. It isn't past time, however, since the temporal anchoring comes from
B.
The affixing of ing is a different matter. It construes the activity as an experiential domain, an event type treated as a field of experience. Repeated use of a tool, uti, naturally gets worn. Deterioration goes without saying. It's a consequence of habit. Wouldn't you know it, habit in French is an item of clothing, vestiment or vêtement. A side note, in the 14th century, the word invest meant to clothe in official robes of any particular office. These correlations should clue us into two factors. One, there were much fewer phonemes and morphemes back then, and two, etymologists' hair-splitting roots ignores a simple fact. People back then will have intermingled more simply through extensive trading and basic pragmatic communication. And of course, people managed their daily lives without over-intellectualizing. I will now illustrate my premise to you users by listing words containing the morpheme TEN. So pay attention. First, I may need to clarify that a phoneme is a contrastive sound unit, while a morpheme is a minimal meaning-bearing unit. Theoretically, and since etymologists theorize an all-unifying Proto-Indo-European language, the PIE root 10 would mean to stretch, and I don't think it a stretch to go a step further and label this phenomenon of a recurring emergent association of a morpheme, where the D sound, and in some cases an N, acts as a resultative. It's what linguists call an unetymological D, or an intrusion, which I see as inferring a result. As I've pointed out in previous blogs and in my ebook Insider English, when either ED or EN is appended to words, it infers a resultative. In any case, the D sound tends to stand for a sense of closure, definiteness, affirmation, declarative, even if only occasionally cross-linguistically. If this is merely coincidental, how do we explain the overwhelming similarity of certain words within the same language? Consider the following. 10 in initial position. Tension, a stretched condition, which I have stated elsewhere is likely related to taught and taught, from which teach is a conversion of taught. The tension created on a drum skin or a stringed instrument from where carries the sound or information as airwaves. Is it such a stretch to conceive that they are one and the same? Is that where we get our grammar tenses, I wonder? A tense being a stretch of time. We have the word to tend, from Latin tendere, meaning stretch toward, as in tend to business or tend to clients or customers. To tend also means care for, to look after, as in tend the cattle, a shortening of attend to. To attend once meant be subject to. In the early 14th century, it meant to direct one's mind or energies. From Old French attendre, only now with two T's, meaning to expect, wait for, to pay attention. Directly from Latin attendere, meaning give heed to, literally to stretch toward, where ad means toward. To tender is found in the expression to tender a bid, to offer formally. A tender is found in goaltender, bartender, contender, extender, and yes, pretender, related to a pretense and pretentious. A tender is or was a type of vehicle like the rail tender, the car that carried coal and water behind a steam locomotive. We also have a ship's tender, a smaller boat towing a larger vessel. Then there's legal tender, originally meaning to offer formally, which is a government-approved form of payment as a valid, authorized medium for paying debts, taxes, and monetary obligations. To intend meant to direct one's attention to pay attention, give heed. From Old French entendre, to hear. From Latin intendere, or turn or strain one's attention in quest of something, and again literally it meant stretch out, extend. To extend comes from Old French estendre, to stretch out, increase, now étendre, as in extend gratitude. In French we have the equivalent expression, to extend a helping hand. Speaking of extension, utensil comes from Latin utensilis, derived, as I already mentioned, from uti, to use. Utensils are any number of tools used, albeit now limited to cooking in English. What is a utensil, after all, but an extension of one's arm, not to mention that which serves or attends? Even the number 10 can be used metaphorically to mean extended, 10 feet tall, feeling extremely successful or confident. A 10-foot pole, the notion of keeping one's distance. A tent is a portable shelter of hide or coarse cloth stretched over poles, from Old French tanta, or hanging tapestry, from medieval Latin tenta, etymologically, something stretched out. Latin tentus, or stretched, would be a substantive, its variant being a participle tendere. Tenant comes from Old French, to signify a feudal tenant or possessor, though in contemporary French it's a locataire. It's the substantive noun of the present participle of tenir, to hold, from Latin tenere, hold, keep or grasp, related to tenet. By the way, the word tennis may come from a French exclamation, tennis. Excuse my French. The equivalent in French of tenet is a principle or doctrine. Figuratively, tenet means hold in mind, take in, understand. The connecting notion between stretch and hold is to cause to maintain. Hold this thought, my tenet extends. Even if the adjective tender, as in a tender person, or a tender wound, or then tender loin, comes from a different Latin root tenere, and from French tonder, can you not hear how it still bears a tendency towards the same, if not similar, connotation? Wait, there's more. To wait can mean to serve tables by a waiter, from French servir and serveur, respectively. First it meant to watch with hostile intent, lie in wait for, or to plot against.
And later it came to mean to stand by in attendance, from Anglo-French and Old North French, to watch. Old French, defend, watch out, be on one's guard, lie in wait for. From Frankish or some other Germanic source, Volten.
From Proto-Germanic wacht, also of Dutch, stand or be on guard. Old High German, to watch, be awake. German, to watch, to guard. Old English, to be awake. Last but not least, you recall how etymologists will theorize a proto-language, PIE, root vague. That would mean to be strong, be lively. I say hence with it. Just listen and learn the power within the phonemes themselves. I think I'm onto something, don't you? If you have watched and waited thus far, I reckon you are truly interested in the English language as I am. Please support my research and endeavors by studying more of my work. Do leave comments and questions because this is how I get further ideas on how I can improve how English is conveyed to adult learners and teachers worldwide. Thank you.